Welcome to another episode of Rim Shots with Sean right here in the Rock Range Radio Network, brought to you by Barstools and Bandtalk. And, we're still dealing with some technical difficulties, but we're getting it done here. I've got a new friend, Mike Alvord. Band is MindWars. Mike, thank you for joining us, my friend.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. It's an honor.
We talked briefly before we started. We were talking about the hockey game last night. Never one to gloat. I won't do that. But where do you live, Mike?
Well, my weather is a little bit nicer than yours, I assume. I'm in sunny Southern California right now.
Oh, poor you. Yeah. I feel terrible for you.
Yeah, it's about 65 degrees Fahrenheit right now. The sun's shining. We have a little bit of wind, which, I don't know how much the news made it up to your parts, but, we were devastated in January by some serious fires and such. So we definitely have our own issues, but
we got all that.
The weather is pretty beautiful here.
Yeah, we were following along with the fire stuff. Obviously, we knew what was taking place, and I have a bunch of friends down there, and terrible stuff. But it looks like people are coming out the other side of it and rebuilding. Is that a fair assessment?
Definitely. Yep. We're pretty resilient down here.
Tell me about MindWars.
Yeah, so MindWars formed actually 12 years ago now, believe it or not. And it was the result of my interaction with our drummer, Robbie Vittori, in 1989, when Holy Terror, my previous band, was touring with Exodus and Nuclear Assault. And Robbie and I met in Italy. And, how did we reconnect in 2013? Through the internet, through Facebook. And so that's kind of where we started putting this thing together.
So now when, you reconnect, I'm not great at math, but that's obviously more than, 30 years past. Yep. Was it an instantaneous reconnection or what took place?
Yeah, it sort of was. I remembered the person. I didn't remember him specifically. What connected us really in '89 when we were playing in Milan is I mentioned that my mom's parents, my grandparents, were from Southern Italy in Calabria. And that just happens to be where Robbie's from. And so we sort of had this kinship back then. And when we reached out, there's a disagreement between the two of us. He says I reached out to him. I say he reached out to me. But either way, we reached out to each other. And we sort of remembered what was going on. He says he remembered me more, obviously, because he came to see my band. But believe it or not, I had still a letter and a cassette tape from his band Head Crasher that he sent me back in 1989.
So, you guys back at it and, some, I guess we'll call it 12, 13 years later. Obviously the dynamics in the business have changed, everything from recording to how music is put out to how musicians are paid. Your process and everything that you've done in terms of players, has that kind of stayed the same or have you matured and changed a little bit?
We've definitely matured and changed. In terms of pay, we're not getting paid anything. We're doing this because we and I think that's with most bands, unless you're in that next tier, you're not really earning anything. If it wasn't for the internet, MindWars wouldn't exist because one, we wouldn't have been able to reconnect, and two, we wouldn't be able to write our first two albums, which we did in separate continents, right? He was still living in Italy and I live in Los Angeles. So there was no way for us to get together and jam. But in 2017 actually, as Robbie began his citizenship in the United States, which when you try to do it the legal process, it takes a long time. He's still doing it. Yeah. He should have his citizenship by the end of this year. And it's cost him, thousands of dollars. But the fact that he is now within an hour's drive, we needed a bass player locally. And so that's when we recruited Rick Zaccaro to join us. And so, the last several years have been more promising than before. people know who I am just because of Holy Terror, but I was out of the industry for 30 years, like you said. And so really I have no true connections with anybody, but we were fortunate enough to go play True Thrash Festival in Japan in 2023. We went over to Europe last year and played Storm Crusher and did several gigs in Belgium and Germany and Austria. So things seem to be starting to go in the right direction, at least progressing forward and not staying flat.
So you're out of the business 30 years. I mean, I was out of the business for 6 years. I mean, lived in Halifax, moved to Toronto. The whole grunge thing kind of, I like to say, Nirvana's the sound of my music career dying, which is pretty much accurate. I got out of it for 6 years. I sold all my gear, didn't play drums for 6 years, and then moved back to Halifax and got back into it. What did you do for 30 years that you were, out of it? Were you just discouraged? Did you need a change? What was it?
Yeah. So the ending of Holy Terror really sort of soured me. We got booted off the tour with Exodus and Nuclear Assault for some business related reasons. And I just was done with it. We had done a 3-month US tour the year before that with DRI and Creator, and it went really well. But the last leg of it, we did it without the main guitarist, Kurt Kohlfeldt, because he was strung out on drugs. And so I was just done. And so interested in the environment. And so I actually went back to school and got a biology degree and an environmental science degree and just kind of focused on that. But I kept playing. I never stopped playing. Being a musician yourself, you have that burning need and desire to always play. And so it's always been there.
Yeah. I mean, I get into corporate sales and started just absolutely dreading life. I became that guy I never wanted to be perfectly honest with you. And when I got back into it, it was very frustrating because you would probably find this too. You went from a somebody to right back to the bottom of the rung and having to claw your way back. So I always like to talk to, and I always appreciate people that do that because it's not easy to do when you've had some success.
Yeah.
To do that again.
Yeah. I still know people and they're kind to me, but I'm not part of the circle, right? You're the outsider now. They know who you are. They like you, but it's like, well, why do we want to let you back in when we kept doing it for the last 30 years? Now you're coming back in. So it's been a little bit of a challenge, but what else am I going to do? I'm at the age now where I just, it's all for fun at this point.
Well, I have an answer to that, and my answer is in 2020. Obviously, we knew everything got shut down. I was playing in a band that was playing 100 shows a year, and I couldn't do that, so I just started recording interviews with some of my friends, and I ended up getting this podcast, and I've met some very cool people like yourself. So my answer would be, why would you want to have anything to do with me? Because I know some cool guys like Mike that might be able to help you, and that unfortunately musicians kind of lose sight of that. They get, this is just take this for what it's worth, but we as musicians get caught up what's immediately in front of us and not what's down the road sometimes.
I think that's part of the human nature in general. It's you tend to only focus, like you said, on what's right there in front of you and not realize. I mean, I've seen your podcast before, but I'm not a big follower. But when Dustin recommended and said, I said, yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I've seen, I've enjoyed, and I love everybody. We're all humans just trying to make our way through this world. And if we have some similarities, music, why not, embrace that? Well,
and I appreciate that. And here's what I would say. That's a win, because for a guy that's on the east coast of Canada, I mean, outside of, maybe Newfoundland, I'm about as far east as you can go. And there's a gentleman on the west coast of the United States that has to even watch 1 or 2 episodes of what I do. That to me is a success, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that sometimes I'm often accused of not taking the wins and not looking at the wins. I'm always trying to move ahead. So it sounds to me like you really kind of get this figured out. You're doing it for fun. You're doing it for, would passion project be a correct phrase?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, even when I stopped being in the industry, I still played. Yeah. I still wrote music. I still had my guitar. I still collected guitars. And so it is a passion. It's something, my mom and well, not so much my dad, but my mom always encouraged me to do what I loved. And one of the things that my grandmother always told me, she says, the only thing you need to worry about is your health. Take care of your health and everything else will work out.
Great advice. Great advice. You mentioned Dustin, and he's set up an awful lot of his clients with me, which has been fantastic. And I probably don't give him enough. I certainly do in private. But how did you, I guess, connect with him? He's just a guy. He sends me 6 to 7 things a day. Master promoter. Everything that he sends me is a little bit different, but it's always top notch. Well recorded. Including your stuff. How did you connect with him?
Yeah, it's through High Roller Records. It's really just, I don't know, is it luck? Is it the right place at the right time? Is it, you're putting out material that people like? I think it's a little bit of everything. So when we were touring Europe and finishing up at Storm Crusher, this guy Joachim in Germany, he's the one who set up the tour, and he loved our new album. And he said, you guys got to get signed. And I said, yeah, we're not anymore. We were on Dissonance Productions, but now we're looking for a label. And so he found us High Roller. And High Roller have been just some of the nicest guys I've ever met. And they're the ones who connected us with Dustin. And all of a sudden, I just started getting emails from Dustin. He's saying, hey, what are your availability? I got all these things I'm going to set up for you. I'm like, okay, here you go, man. And he's just been fabulous. So I don't really know him. But I get the sense that he's on top of it, because I sent him an email this morning. It was a couple minutes after 9. I said, hey, is this one still on? Because he usually sends me a reminder.
Right.
He says, hey, here's the link. Remember, you're on at this time. And he got back to me immediately. He said, yep. He says, he'll be right on. I'm like, okay, man.
Yeah, when it's funny because he sent me a message and I was like, I'm sitting there going like, what's going on? I got to get on. And then the internet popped up and there was a thing. I'm like, tell him 5 minutes, man. And I'm on. But one of the things that you point out that's super interesting, because when things were shut down and we started this podcast, I would always say, if people were taking advantage of technology, when things opened up, they'd be the better for it. If people were kind of sitting around whining about the situation, and when things open up, they'd be behind the 8 ball. You haven't met Dustin yet. He's working for you. What would you say to people about that? Because I think sometimes people are skeptical about that model. That's pretty much the model in the world we live in now.
Yeah, there's something to be said about the personal connection and interaction. But we need to embrace everything that's happening around us. And if people are going to be kind, regardless of where they live, regardless of what their background is, if they want to connect and they want to help, why not embrace that?
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of being respectful and kind to each other. And if you can do that, everything else is a win.
It's interesting, when we started, you had said, I don't know if you heard about the fires, which we did. And I think, so I was saying, I deal with a lot of people in the States, and I think there's a disconnect between Americans and Canadians, that we don't think each other knows about each other's country, right? So we did know about the fires. It was a big thing. I had a lot of friends down there. I'm not a political guy by any stretch of the imagination. I don't care about politics. But, in case you're wondering, we don't want to become the 51st state. You guys are amazing. But we'll put that out there. But that being said, how dialed in are you guys to, worldly matters in terms of your music, or do you just kind of focus stateside?
It's a really good question. I do follow politics, but they're all the same. I like to think that people that get into public service do it because they want to help other people.
Please excuse the interruption. Could Colin Baker please come to the office with your belongings? That's Colin Baker. Thanks.
That maybe just the corruption and the power just feeds itself.
Yeah.
Because generally what you see is they just put out what they think people want to hear. And so they're all the same. We're just dealing now with a different billionaire class than we were a few years ago. There's not a lot of difference.
And I mean, it's really funny because it's like I had an opportunity to go over to Dublin last year and play. And you get over there, and we're in a pub and we're talking, and we love you, Canadians. We don't like your prime minister, but we love. And it's funny, like everybody's get the same thing, right? And
Right.
again, I'm not a political guy by any stretch, but I think sometimes it's the people in power that try to divide the underlings, if you will. And if people would just do a little bit to get past that minutia and just focus on the good stuff, the right stuff,
Yep.
I don't think there'd be any of these battles that you see online, left, right, center, whatever.
No, you hit it. It's designed to divide to keep them in power.
Right.
Regardless of what side it's on. And, what I think people tend to forget, I've been following this guy, Ryan Holiday, a bit, and it's a kind of stoic philosophy. We're only in control of our own actions, right? When I wake up in the morning, I can choose to be positive or I can choose to be negative. It's my choice, regardless of what's going on in my life. I could have the most devastating things happening, but my mindset needs to be positive the best I can. And if you can do that, and like you said, if everybody just did that, we would all progress one step further and better each day.
So we've just proven that two musicians are not stupid. We can get it figured out when we need to. And like I said, one's Canadian, one's American, and yet, hey, there's no battle and there's no back and forth. It's all common sense.
Maybe you and I should run for political office. Wait, check that.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that because I had this conversation with somebody the other day. I know so many good people that would do a good job, and then the second that they threw their hat in the ring, somebody'd find out about an affair or them smoking drugs when they were 17 years old. And,
Yep.
You know what I mean? So anyway, so in terms of what you guys have on the go now, you got your release. You mentioned you put a couple of albums out. Is there any plans? I mean, we're in the winter up here, and it's not a great time to tour. But are any plans for you guys to do some shows, hit the road, that type of thing?
Yeah, we actually have 4 shows slated in Japan. So we're heading off March 22nd for Japan. We're working with a local promoter in California. He's working on a couple shows and a festival in Northern California. He's hoping to get it done by mid-March, which would be sort of a nice warm-up for us to before we go over to Japan.
Yeah.
And then after that, we don't really have anything set up. We're hoping to go back to Europe. I would love to come to Canada. In 1988, I think we played the Spectrum in Montreal. But that's the only time I've played in Canada, and I would love to get something set up. It's just a matter of people wanting to give us a chance. And there's not a whole lot of chances out there because maybe now with High Roller, we'll get some more buzz. But if you're not in a specific circle, sometimes you just don't even you're an afterthought.
Yeah. And it's just, the landscape's really changed, and the people that are tenacious enough to stick with it will get somewhere, but it's just that frustrating. Again, it's almost like I'm not going to quit. I feel like I want to quit, but I won't. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I guess last question here, Mike, as we wrap her up, where do my viewers, my listeners, the folks on the Rock Rage Radio Network find out about you guys, where they get your music, follow you, etc.?
So the easiest one would be MindWars Band on Facebook, right? Just look us up on Facebook. That's probably the easiest. We definitely have a Twitter handle as well. Our website, mindwarsofficial.com, all the links to get the pre-release, because the album comes out March 7th. The album's entitled 5. And High Roller Records is accepting pre-orders right now. So you can they're releasing it in, and I don't have the cassette yet, but here's the CD. So it's a fantastic looking CD. They're doing vinyl. They have the splatter vinyl. Beautiful. They have red. I know the lighting is not great in this room, and they have just the standard black. So cassette, CD, and vinyl, all available. Instagram. What is our Instagram? I should know that too, right? I don't even know what the hell our Instagram is. I think it's MindWars_band. And you can find us there. And send me a message on Facebook. I'd be more than happy to reply to anybody.
Fantastic. And in regards to your CD/album, how much more black can it be? And the answer is none more black, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You and I get the reference. Some may not. I want to thank you for doing this, my friend. What I heard, and Justin didn't spill the total beans. He sent me a teaser, which was great. I will definitely be getting my hands on that when it's out. And best of luck. Let's stay in touch. I want to stay in touch with you guys.
Absolutely, Sean. I truly appreciate this, and best of luck with your podcast. I mean, I think it's fantastic. I spend most of my free time like walking my dog and stuff like that, listening to podcasts, and yours is one on the list. So thank you so much.
I appreciate that. And again, we were an accident, if you will. It was never on my bucket list to be a podcast host, but here I am. So I guess we just roll with it.
You never know what life's going to bring. Right on, man. Thanks.
Peace, brother.